time to shoot my last roll on my first serious medium format camera, the Mamiya 645. I've had this for almost a year now, and I bought it after shooting medium format for the very first time on an old Kodak Reflex 2, and I only had that for about a week, but I fell in love with medium format immediately, and I knew that the Mamiya 645 would give me sharper images with better color despite a smaller negative, not to mention that the Kodak Reflex 2 only shot on 620 film, which meant that I had to modify 120 rolls to make it work. I've taken this camera with me across the country, from Ohio to Rhode Island to Colorado to Chicago and more, and I'm taking some awesome photos with it while seriously improving both my skills and my style. This camera was the perfect introduction to medium format, but I couldn't stop thinking about how much I loved shooting on a TLR despite only having one for that 1 week. And I think I shot one more roll on a TLR a few months after that. And again, I just loved the experience. And when I talk about the experience of shooting on a TLR versus an SLR like the Mamiya 645, I'm not just talking about the way I take pictures with the cameras. I'm also talking about how easy it becomes to strike up conversations with strangers and to make them ease up. My work more recently, and I haven't posted much about this yet, has been focused on talking to strangers and taking their photos. It's not supposed to be a copycat thing of Humans of New York, it's just a deeply personal journey to combat my innermost shyness. Holding up a TLR eases people up because it's such a relic. It's such a conversation starter. It's so different. Most people alive right now have never had their picture taken on a TLR before. Now, I'm comfortable on camera. I'm comfortable talking in front of literally thousands of people, but I get shy about talking to strangers when I'm alone. Switching to a TLR is helping me to do this more effectively. So to anybody thinking about getting a Mamiya 645, here are some pros and cons that I've noticed after shooting this for almost a year. We'll start with the pros. Pro number one, it's relatively light and small. When you compare this camera to say a Mamiya RB or RZ67, the 645 suddenly seems pocketable, which it's not, by the way, but every RB67 owner that I've talked to is envious of how easy it is to carry the 645 around. Pro number two, you get 15 shots per roll. Compare that to 12 shots on a 6x6 camera, 10 shots on a 6x7 camera, or just 8 shots on the slightly more rare 6x9 camera. 15 shots per roll makes the Mamiya 645 a slightly more economical option. And speaking of economical, here's pro number three. It's relatively inexpensive for a nice medium format camera. Now I say relatively because prices seem to be going up literally every single day. I bought mine in 2020 in absolute perfect mint condition for $500 even. I sold the original 80mm lens on it for about $250, and I bought a 55mm lens for about $200. And that kind of leads me into pro number four. Lenses are fast and affordable. It's hard to find lenses on 6x6 or 6x7 format that can shoot at f2.8, but that's kind of the standard for a lot of Mamiya 645 lenses. By the way, f2.8 on 645 format is the 35mm equivalent of about f1.7. And one more pro about this camera, it's so easy to use. There's really nothing complicated about operating it, loading the film, or anything else. Plus, you can easily do multiple exposures by flipping a switch. So here are two quick cons about the camera. Con number one is less about specifically the Mamiya 645, it's more about 645 format in general. It's only a slight upgrade to the 35mm format. It's definitely noticeable, and in my opinion, it's totally worth it, but there's a reason why people are so obsessed with 6x7 instead. You can get that quote-unquote medium format look from 645, but not as easily as you do with 6x6 or 6x7. And con number two, a little bit specific to the Mamiya 645 lenses, but the rule that lenses get sharper as you close up the aperture isn't always true with these lenses. You'll have to know the sharpness based on each specific lens. And I'll link a sheet in the description that shows you the sharpness grading for each lens at each aperture stop. But my 55mm lens on the Mamiya 645 camera is supposedly sharper at the more open apertures than it is at the closed ones. That's sort of a pro or con depending on what or how you're shooting. This obviously is not a comprehensive list of pros and cons, but in conclusion, I would 100% recommend the camera to someone who is looking to get into medium format and wants a reliable workhorse of a camera that can be easily taken wherever you go. This thing's also a tank. That's a pro I forgot to mention. I'm really gonna miss having this camera around, partially because of how reliable it is, but mostly for the sentimental value of it. All the memories, good and bad, associated with the camera, so many different photo shoots, so many amazing photos that I'm really proud of, but I'm really excited to be moving back to shooting in 6x6 format for my medium format photos, and especially for talking with and photographing strangers.
If this video was helpful for you, it would mean the world to me if you subscribe. We're just at over 200 subscribers, and I'm working really hard to get to that 1,000-person mark, which is gonna take some time, and you can help me get there. When you come to subscribe to this channel, you're not really here to learn from me, you're more here to learn with me. So no dumb questions and no silly topics. I hope this was helpful for you. Even if it was helpful to just one person, it was totally worth me taking the time to make it. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.